It's Fill Your Plate Now, where every bite brings you closer to the farm gate and further from what's unhealthy. Now here's your hosts, Julie and Tammy, helping you live well by filling your plate well.
Hi, this is Julie Murphy with Arizona Farm Bureau.
And Tammy Baker with Arizona Milk Producers.
And this segment is going to be radically fun because it's about wine.
And cheese.
And cheese. And pairing foods. And darn it, we didn't think to bring in any wine. I want to kind of set the stage with Arizona's wine industry. It's an amazing industry, and it's had fast growth within about a 4 or 5 year period, starting back in, I think, 2012, they had something like just under 1,000 acres of wine grapes. Mm-hmm. And now, and within that 5 year period, they more than doubled that. So we kind of range anywhere about 2,500 acres of wine grapes. A good chunk of those wine grapes, about 80% of them, are down in the Cochise County area, Wilcox area. But there's 3 regions, and our expert will talk about that. But it's an amazing growing industry that's very significant for tourism, and we have some of our own special things that we can highlight, and that's one of the reasons why I brought in our guest, Valeree, Halsey, Ibarra, and we're going to call you a wine consultant. Thank you. I want to give a little bit of a profile on you because you have a fascinating background. So before you got into the wine business, my understanding is that you were an international business development consultant.
Correct.
And then all of a sudden you
about
just
20
said,
years.
About 20 years.
Mm-hmm.
And you said, wait a minute, I love wine. So then you pursued getting your sommelier diploma. You're an international sommelier guide or guild. And then you also have the Wine Fundamentals Certificate, level 1 and 2, and the Culinary Institute of America. So you're in your sweet spot with sweet wine and dry wine, and right?
And food, but it all started with food.
It all started with food. And so that's the other reason why I felt like it'd be fun to have you join us. And so we've got several questions. And by the way, we're going to have 3 major takeaways at the end of this so that you know what to do. And the advice is going to be fun. It's going to be pretty straightforward. It's not going to be complicated. But I'm going to launch with our first question is, so what are the fundamental principles when you're pairing food and wine, Valeree?
Okay. Well, first of all, thank you for having me today. This is, like you said, a super fun opportunity, and I feel honored that you invited me. And so let's dive in. I would say, first and foremost, you need to start off with what is the focus? Is it going to be the food? Is it going to be the wine?
Oh, okay.
And from there, you branch out. And it's not really a question of red or white, and in some instances, even green wine, and actually even more recently, orange wine, which we can get into, which is not made with oranges. But and then just decide at that point, are you going to do complementary components with the wine and the food, or are you going to contrast the components?
Okay.
From there, then honestly, the world's your oyster. You can do what you want, and it largely has to do with personal preference too. So a chef obviously is going to start off from the food perspective. But then someone like myself who's more interested now in wine, when I'm doing a wine and food pairing, I'll start with the wines that I want to showcase and then find the appropriate foods that complement the wine and vice versa, because it's a two-way street. There's this lovely little tension between the two that when you start discovering it, it starts to get to a bad habit. But it's really fun. I mean, what can be wrong with food and wine pairings? I mean, you know, we're lucky to be sitting here talking about something that's kind of indulgent and fun.
So I'd be a little bit like you then. When I discover a new Arizona wine and it's a unique grape, then I can lead with that. And then begin to ask myself, so with that pairing, well, first of all, I'm just going to call Valeree, but then I can say, what will be my menu? Is, to your point, is kind of how you're... Okay.
Exactly. And when you know what components your wine has, if it's light, fruity, acidic, tannic, medium bodied, light bodied, that's when your choices start to develop. So acid is always the most important thing to determine the level of acidity in your wine, because that's going to change everything.
Okay.
If you pair high acid wine with food that's of lesser acidity, it's going to make the wine taste too acid.
Okay.
And it's just, and then if your wine doesn't have enough acidity for the food, the wine's going to taste flabby and flat. So these are all just little things you play with and you learn as you go along, and it's fun to experiment. And once you start developing your palate, what you like, then it's like a cog and wheel. It kind of starts going in place.
Awesome.
Interesting. Yeah, I am also very excited to have you on today because I love wine, first of all, but I love learning more about wine. And I think with agriculture in general, most people don't see it because it's not right next to the city or in the city. Mm-hmm. So having it in some of the far-reaching places of Arizona, doesn't make it quite as accessible, and people forget that Arizona does have quite a few wines that they can offer. You answered a little bit of one of my questions on the contrast or complementary, but taking it from a different angle, let's say you're going to someone's house for dinner, is there any kind of wine or group of wines that you would recommend that really kind of transcends through all different types of meals your host might be serving?
Well, when in doubt, take a red and a white.
Cover all your bases.
Cover all the bases.
Okay.
But here's the thing. All food needs some acidity. Mm-hmm. Otherwise, it's just, when you make a dish, say it's a pasta or if you're finishing your sauce, something, that little tiny spritz of lemon juice or lime juice or a little tiny splash of vinegar, that is just going to set the stage for everything to open up and be brighter. And the same happens with the wine. If there's not enough acidity to carry it through, it's not going to complement the food that you're eating. Now, that being said, I would always recommend something in the white category, light to medium, and in the red category, medium to full-bodied, because then you've kind of covered all bases. For people who don't like white wine, but say the dish is chicken or something, or pasta, a light red wine will still fit beautifully with that, because lighter reds usually have higher acidity.
Mm. Oh, okay. Yeah, and I know there's many occasions where we do wine and cheese pairing as well, and it's really the same kind of philosophy. You have the lighter wines for lighter dishes, the same thing with cheese. I mean, you'd go with a mild cheese first, and then you build the flavor as you go. So you would start with maybe a brie, and then something medium range, and maybe a blue at the other end, and go with 3 to 5 cheeses so that you can build on that flavor. And it sounds like you're saying, you could pair those light dishes or a light cheese with a lighter wine, and then a more robust wine would go with a heavier cheese. Mm-hmm. So.
And there's also nothing wrong with, if you have like a progression in your dinner from hors d'oeuvres to an appetizer entree. If you have a white with your appetizer and then a red with your entree, suppose there's a cheese course. You can always go back to your white. I mean, there's no hard and fast rules. Rules are made to be broken. So we set the stage with the rules, but then after that,
you break them.
You break them. You have fun, and then you learn what works and what doesn't work. Mm-hmm. And there's nothing wrong with putting your glass down and saying, okay, that's going to be on the shelf for a little bit until I get back to something, or palate cleanse, or do something.
Mm-hmm. A 2022 study for the Arizona wine industry concluded that it contributes about $4 billion to our economy, even though you may not be able to compare it to a California wine industry. It's very significant, and it's going to only grow. And these array of the different wine grapes are really out there. So what about, working with complicated ingredients, like something that's real spicy, what would you say for someone, or give them recommendations, even if it was an Arizona wine? Because people don't realize how many wine grapes we're growing here in the state, the variety. So could you give counsel to that?
Sure. Great segue, by the way. I think one of the other major components in the whole pairing is the intensity. The intensity of the wine, the intensity of the food, and that gets to your spicy.
Right.
So the food is spicy. You want something that is either going to completely contrast or complement. So contrasting would be something with a white, for instance, that has an intense flavor, but it has the acidity and it's not heavy-bodied, because that's going to clobber and just kind of overwhelm everything. You want something that is going to contrast. So the fruit intensity is going to be there, the acidity is going to be there, but the wine is light. And then, so you take, for instance, Thai food or any of the Asian foods that have, quite a lot of chilies in them. Or
Right.
that's a perfect example where you could go with a white. Go over to the Mexican spectrum of food, where a lot of chilies, again, spicy, perhaps even barbecue that has some heat in barbecue, and things tend to be a little sweeter in the sauces, but they're still spicy. That's the time to go for a full-bodied, fruit-forward, low acid to medium acid red wine that doesn't have tannins, because the tannins are going to make everything taste tinny and metallic.
Okay.
So a Red Zinfandel, a Merlot, a Grenache, or as the Spanish call it, Garnacha, Mourvedre. All of these grapes really pair wonderfully with spicy foods.
And so what would you say then is the biggest mistake that consumers make overall in choosing to pair the wine?
Not taking into account the weight of the wine and the weight of the food and the intensity that we talked about.
Okay.
So, and what are mistakes? I mean, some people are just going to drink the glass of wine that they want, whether, it goes well or not. And I have those in my own family. So I just close my eyes and go, okay, you enjoy that. So. But if this is your purpose, if you want to explore and see what really works, and the whole concept is to make the wine sing and the food dance. You're having a party.
Okay.
I love it, yes.
The wine sing and the food dance. I
Sounds
love
like
that.
a fun party.
Exactly.
So if you had a 5-course meal, theoretically, you could have 5 different paired wines to each one of those courses, correct? Yeah.
Absolutely. Especially if you have a group of, say, 6 to 8 people, then everybody gets, a nice pour that they can enjoy and discover the differences in the wines that they're pairing with the food and enjoying, and it's like an exploration party.
Wow, that's neat. Did you want? I think you're next.
Well, I was just going to ask if there are a few Arizona wines that you could recommend that punch above their weight when it comes to pairing.
Okay, well, this would be a great opportunity to talk about the Arizona Wine Growers Competition that I just participated in as a judge. That was back in January. But I just learned the favorite wine that I chose was the 2000, let me see, what was that? The 2020, hang on, bear with me, 2021 Callaghan Rumline Alianico.
From Kent, Callaghan?
From Kent and Lisa.
Awesome.
Yeah, and it was just so beautiful. It had this core of ripe red fruit that had back notes of licorice and herbs, and it just had such a beautiful finish too, because the acidity was there that carried it all the way through to the wine. So I don't know if you've ever tasted a wine and it feels really nice in your mouth, and then You swallow it, and all of a sudden it goes away. When there's enough acidity in the wine that keeps you thinking about it, and you're
Right.
like, oh, I can't wait to have another sip. That is an exceptional wine. And so, anyways, that was my wine. So that I chose as the
Awesome.
favorite of. And I think that day, my team we tried 36 wines.
Wow.
So
Now that's
Yeah.
got to be we're talking about wine pairings. That's got to be a challenge when obviously you've got to clean your palate, maybe even rest it for a while. I mean,
take lots of sips of water.
yes. Yep.
Well, and the thing too is, with the way it's organized, you go through a flight of whites, for instance. So by the end of that, you've got the acidity just going, and your mouth is watering, and then you get into more medium-bodied white wines, and palate starts to calm down. And, sipping water, and you're spitting, and neutral crackers, whatnot. But then you finish off with the big bold reds, and then you're starting to get all the tannins that kind of overwhelmed. So that's like drinking tea that's been oversteeped, right? That's that desiccating feel in between your lips and your teeth. But because it's a progression, not one thing overwhelms the other. So in essence, yes, 36 wines is a lot to taste.
And they were all just Arizona wines.
Just Arizona wine.
Yeah.
Yeah, and exceptional
Yeah.
exceptional wines, I would say.
I know with red wines especially, there's often an aging process. What does that do to the wine? Does that decrease the tannins, increase the tannins, or is it just
Okay, now you're getting into
flavor?
winemaking, which is not my forte, but I will attempt to answer it. Tannins are the phenolic compounds on the grape skins, in the grape pips, in the seeds, that never ripen after they're picked. So if the tannins are unripe or if they're green, they're always going to stay that way. They can soften out with the winemaking process in barrel aging, but they're not going to dramatically change. They'll soften somewhat. The acidity in the wine is what really carries it through in terms of ageability.
Wow.
Again,
Very,
I'm not a
that's
winemaker.
interesting.
So let's talk about then even the way you cook something can possibly impact the wine that you might select. For example, let's take salmon. You can grill it, roast it. You can have it raw. Will that influence the way you cook whatever it is? The way you cook it, will that influence maybe a wine that you would select?
Most definitely.
Okay.
And that again gets back to the weight of the wine and the food and what you do with that. So again, you can with certain proteins, you can go red or white. It just depends on how you cook it. So you have somebody who doesn't eat red meat. They're coming over for dinner and you decide to do salmon or chicken. But they only like red wine.
Oh, how funny. Okay.
Right? So, and you know that. We want to be a nice host and a gracious host. So what do? You grill it or broil it and serve a red wine that's medium-bodied, that has a good amount of acidity, and lower in tannins. Because again, you take that oily, when we're talking fish, you take that oily component of the fish with something that has high tannins in it, and you're going to get that metallic, tinny, mineral taste
Okay.
of the wine. The wine is not going to be complemented, in other words. And, some people are fine with that.
Yeah.
But, if you're striving for perfection, I mean, then go
It's
for
very
it.
complex. This reminds me of the equivalent of word problems in math. You have this, and this variable. How do you make it work? And
Yeah.
Well, yeah, because all of a sudden you have numbers, and then someone decides to throw the alphabet in your math. It's like, hello, that's not fair.
But what I'm struck, a takeaway that I'm already gathering from this is that if you, again, and you can break the rules, you're the one that said it first,
I'm a rule breaker.
it might maximize the glorious taste of whatever that wine is. And then if you've got an award-winning one like Callaghan's, you're going to want to pair it with the right.
Exactly. So then this gets back to number one again, focus. Is it the food or is it the wine?
Sure,
So,
okay.
and if you're the host or if you're doing the cooking and the choosing of the wine,
Right.
you've got all the balls in your
Yeah.
court.
That is very true. Well,
Yeah.
and I think it's exciting, as you mentioned, the growth of the wine industry
Right.
in Arizona. You know, I mean, that's contributing and giving back to our economy, and it's great to have local wines. What do you attribute that growth to overall, this rapid growth of Arizona wines?
Well, Arizona is blessed with having an incredible climate, first and foremost. And after that is the geology. So when you've got good soil and you've got a good climate, you have pretty ideal conditions for grape growing. Now, it's all about where you plant and what you choose to plant. So if you take a look at the AVAs in Arizona, they're all at higher elevations. I think the lowest is 3,500 feet, and they go up to 5,500 feet in elevation. So they're much cooler when we're slugging it out down here in 110 plus in the city, in the valley. That they're up there on the foothills, and the grapes are just loving it. So part of it would be climate, and then I would also attribute it to the Southwest Wine School in Yavapai. I mean,
Right.
they've done a
Oh,
phenomenal
okay.
job
I'm glad you mentioned that.
of
Yeah.
of putting together a program that teaches enology and viticulture, business, entrepreneurship, and then they have a teaching winery. And so many of the new wineries and the new winemakers here in Arizona are all graduates of that college. And it's phenomenal. So that would be a really big part of it too, I think.
And there are 3 wine regions, right? Aren't they? There's
3, and then there's one they call outliners.
Okay.
It's a baby.
so. Do you know what they are? Do you have the? I know there's the Verde Valley,
The Verde Valley, there's
Wilcox,
Wilcox, and then Sonoyta Elgin.
the Sonoyta Elgin region, and again, they each get to have their own little microclimate, and based on the diversity of the wine grapes that we're growing.
Right.
I think of somebody that's very busy and involved with us at the Arizona Farm Bureau. Well, he graduated from the Yavapai Wine College.
Okay.
Emil Mullen, Cove Mesa.
Oh, okay. Yep.
He's might be a little bit newer in the realm of all the, we know the Bostocks from Dos Cabezas, and you just mentioned Kent, and
There's so many.
there's so many.
Chateau Tumbleweed,
Yes, and then-
Merkin, Caduceus, of course.
Right.
I mean, honestly,
and Ruth and Jim Graham from
the Grahams.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They're just so precious.
Rune,
yes,
James Callaghan.
Yep.
Callahan.
So some of them came in a little bit earlier than others, but our agriculture environment in these 3 different wine regions are creating this opportunity for others to come in and really make this industry. I feel like what we have in Arizona compared to some of the other wine regions, I did find out that each state in the union, they have wine grapes, to your point about good soil and climate, but there's some pretty unique things to Arizona's.
It is. Well, and then you get into the classification of grapes too, the Vitis vinifera, that are the noble grapes. I'm not sure that all of the states in the union grow the Vitis vinifera, but just in terms of Arizona, when you think of the climate, when you think of the soils, the mimic wine region that I think of is Spain. It's very similar. So
Oh, really? Okay.
I have been a big fan of Spanish grapes for many years back. That's actually how I got to know all the winemakers here not all of them, but I'm talking
A lot of them.
15 plus years ago. and when they were part of a group that I worked with, and we did events in San Francisco. And that was all Spanish grapes, by the way. They just do so well here because the climates are similar, the soils are similar. And so if you're a winemaker and you, doggone it, you want to grow cab, but cab is just not right for your soil and you're insistent, then it's probably not going to be as great as it could be if you planted grapes that were really meant for that climate, that soil, that elevation.
It's kind of like wine pairing.
So yeah, basically you're finding the grapes that work in this environment, and that's why the industry is thriving here, because you've got the right grapes in the right climate.
Not being a winemaker or a wine grower, a grape grower, I would definitely say that to me is the key to success. Grow what works and do it well. And it's just like a career. Do what you love, and then you never work a day in your life. So if you grow the right grapes, they sing, they shine, they make beautiful examples and expressions of the wine. And, you have that beautiful golden liquid elixir of the gods in your glass, and you get to enjoy that and share it with other people.
So if we wanted to try Arizona wines, are there wine tastings or wine festivals that are annual, or places to go to try a variety of Arizona wines?
There are a lot of events that are ongoing. Generally speaking, it's the winter months when we have the snowbirds here, where the wine festivals and wine events are held. And I would say just if you look those up and attend them, because then you really have an opportunity to taste all of the wines, like right at your walking path. You have your sipping glass and you walk around and you taste the wines that you like. It'll open up new horizons for you potentially in grapes that you didn't know that you liked.
Especially the festivals, because then you can sample, because all of the winemakers come out.
Sample, or sometimes they even have, there's a couple stores, wine shops, wine tasting venues, one in Tucson, and there's one here in Old Town Scottsdale, and I'm so sorry, I forget the names of them right now off the top of my head, but they carry a vast array of Arizona wine, so you can go there, and maybe they're having one of the winemakers in to do a pouring or a tasting. Look those up. I mean, go online, find out what's in the calendar of events. I think Facebook does something like that, where you can put in, what your interest is and what's going on this weekend, that type of thing.
Arizona wines, you can pop it in, and some things will pop up. I also tell people to go to the Arizona Wine Growers website.
Exactly.
The reason is because they do have a lot of the wine growers / makers listed, and so someone can go, if they are hyperlinked, you can go to their specific website and then discover when their tasting rooms are open, where they're located. You can literally make either Southern Arizona or Northern Arizona, you can make it a weekend wine tasting experience. And then the other thing that's I've noticed with a lot of those that especially have been here for quite some time, they might have more than one tasting location. And their website should be able to tell them that. So the most aggregated grouping of all of our Arizona winemakers can be found on the Arizona Wine Growers. And I would just tell people to Google Arizona Wine Growers, and up will come the website. The other thing is I go into all sorts of shops where I know they're selling wine, and I just simply ask, are you carrying any of the Arizona wines? And invariably they are. So if they have I would like to just take you with me everywhere I go shopping, especially when it comes to wine, but if they have a sommelier, AJ's, a lot of times I've quizzed him or her, and a lot of times they've given me really good recommendations. And half the time I'll say, are you carrying any of the Arizona wines?
Right.
And then they'll tell me.
And they usually have a little section that says, Arizona wine, and they'll lead you right to them.
Right.
And I'd also like to give a shout out in the East Valley in Gilbert. There's Garage East.
Oh, yes.
And they make
I love that
not
place.
only, aren't they great?
Yeah.
I mean, they not only have their own wine, but they carry a lot of Arizona wine. And
And it's Garage East, and it's in the little Agritopia development.
right. Yeah, fun place. Fun place. Love that. The other one in Phoenix is Genuine. And I have not been there myself, but I do know that they carry a lot of Arizona wine. I don't know exclusively or not, but a lot of the winemakers have tasting events there as well. So these little places, they pop up. Oh, Tracy Dempsey, what's the name of her wine shop? She has a wine shop right next to her bakery, and she does pop-up tastings with the winemakers, or they'll have their wine club pickup party down in Tempe for the people that are in this area instead of going down to Sonoyta, Elgin, that type of thing. There's always something to seek out.
And old downtown Scottsdale, there's some wine tasting rooms. But Tammy, being with the Arizona Dairy Council, I want to hear about the wine and cheese pairings and some of the things that you guys offer.
Funny that you mentioned that, because we'll have on our website, on our YouTube site, as well as Arizona Milk Producers and Arizona Farm Bureau's site.
Yes.
We'll have this cheese, wine, and charcuterie board pairing, and it gives you tips on how much cheese you should use, which is generally 2 to 4 ounces per person. And we talked a little bit about going from the mild to the heavier, only using 3, no more than 5 cheeses, because then there's too many flavors, and going from your softer to your harder cheeses. And also just a few tips on, information about cheese in terms of nutritional value. It's high in protein, phosphorus, calcium, and many of your cheeses, particularly your aged cheeses, are very, very low in lactose. So if you're lactose intolerant, oftentimes you can tolerate some of the aged cheeses.
Oh, I didn't realize that. Okay. Aged cheeses. Okay.
And, far too many things on this to go over because we wanted to concentrate on the wine part today. But it does tell you some of the perfect things to pair with wine, cheese, and fruits, olives, nuts, so you can make a nice charcuterie board as well.
Yeah.
Which we should have brought in too, along with wine, and we could have sampled it all.
We'll get better at this as we go.
I know.
Our excuse is to bring Valeree back anyway, so we can try.
Okay, so that would be really fun.
Yeah, exactly. So here's the question I have tied into Tammy's and her organization's expertise on the different wines. And I also like that these cards show me how much cheese I can have. What if I want a little bit more? No.
You can have as much cheese as you want, but if you're planning for a group and doing something, it's nice to know about how much you should order per person, and that they usually say is 2 to 4 ounces for a tasting.
For a tasting.
Or for a reception or something like that.
But my question for you is, when just knowing what you know and being a certified sommelier, do you always start? I mean, is it more than one course that you always offer when you have guests over? And then do you have, by the end of the evening, have you opened more than one bottle of wine? I mean, how do you do it, especially when you start with hors d'oeuvres and cheese?
Oh, well. I am a consummate overthinker, so I always prepare for at least 4. And, well, more than one bottle of wine. Because I like to explore. And if you're going to have people over, I think that's a great opportunity to open bottles, because then you're not really, you're not going to waste it. Because wine is a luxury item. Good wine's a luxury item, I think, anyways. So if you have 6 to 8 people over, everyone can have a nice taste of a bottle. And so I will definitely do hors d'oeuvres, appetizer, dinner. Not always cheese course, or the cheese course may be in the beginning, or something to do with cheese in the beginning for hors d'oeuvres. And then a dessert. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. I overthink everything. And then I start thinking, why did I do so much? But it's always fun. I'm never disappointed, because I love doing things for my friends and family. And
I know your guests are never disappointed. Tammy, are you the same way? Do you have a tendency to like make sure that you've got more than one course? Do you open more than one bottle of wine? So I can't speak
You
to
would
this
ask?
because I always show up and eat other people's food because I'm not much of a cook. But
Looking at it, overthinking it, as you said, usually we'll have different types of wine with different courses, but also because I know some of my guests have a preference towards one over another.
Sure, yeah.
So sometimes there's more than one type of wine because I know someone only drinks reds or only drinks whites or only, wants something light or sparkly. So just in order to try to make sure there's something for everyone, I generally think of it from that standpoint. And then you can pair it with what you're having throughout the evening as well.
So this also tells me that our personal taste can kind of override what might have been the best pairing of a food.
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, these are rules that people came up with because, first of all, they make sense.
Right.
But nothing's hard and fast. And like I said, rules are made to be broken. So you experiment and you tick it off or you cross it off and you go to the next one.
But I do agree with what she said because I've seen and I've experienced tastings before, and it really does bring out the flavor of the food if you have the right wine paired with the right food.
And vice versa, I'll say too, because like if you take a look at Old World, so European, when you taste Old World wines initially and you swirl your glass, fruit is not the first thing that comes on your nose. And if it is, it's usually from a warmer climate. But then when you have that first sip, it's quite austere. European wines, put it this way, European wines are meant to be drunk with food being eaten. The Italians do it, the French do it, the Spanish do it, the Portuguese do it, the Greeks do it. I mean, all the wine regions in Europe, that's how their culture is from growing up. Young children start off with watered down wine. So when you take that into account, and again, getting back to the weight and intensity, a bite of food, the right food with an austere wine, all of a sudden the wine opens up and you can start tasting all the components of it. And it's just kind of, it opens your mind, it kind of broadens your horizons. It's like, okay, so if the Europeans have been doing these for centuries, millennia probably, why can't we do it too, right? And one of the fun things that I love to do, usually around the holidays, because that's when indulgence is at its peak, pair a dish with an Old World wine and the counterpart from the New World. So a warmer climate where the wines are more fruit forward than they are the fruit is taking a back seat from the French or the Spanish, Italian grapes. And just comparing the two when you're eating your meal, that's one of my favorite things to do, especially with Old Bordeaux and New World Bordeaux from my home wine region, which is British Columbia. It's just, it's magical.
It's almost like you can travel the world at your dinner table.
You definitely can. And to be honest, that's one of the reasons why I was so enthralled with this whole sommelier wine. You've got history and geography and geology and climate and languages and food. And it's like, oh, well, those are all my favorite things in the world. So,
Well, this makes sense that you'd get that because you speak, 3 languages fluently? Dutch?
yeah, kind of.
Yeah, kind of. Spanish. So, experiencing the world at your dinner table, and one of the best ways to do it, I think, is with wine.
I think so too. And I mean, you've given us a lot to think about. Is there, as a summary, are there 3 to 6 takeaways you'd want to give our listeners?
I would say, where we started, focus. If it's going to be wine, then decide what is the weight of the dish that you're pairing, and make sure the weight of the wine is either going to be complementary or contrasting. And if contrasting, it still has to have, the intensity still has to match so that the balance is there. Because if it's out of balance, then we haven't done our job, really. We're just going back to, we like that wine. It doesn't matter what we're eating with it, right? But if you really want to have fun with this, that's kind of number one and number two. And number three, have fun.
Have fun.
Yeah.
And you will give us permission to break the rules. But I do feel like there's some things that you've given us insights today that will, like you said, it's the song and the dance. If we make application to some baseline rules to this, I think there's going to open up for us. Maybe my palate is not as trained as yours, but it's going to open up for me some true appreciation of some wonderful wines, and we're promoting Arizona agriculture. So let's try some of these Arizona wines.
Yeah.
Why are you, and you've noticed it because Arizona has some unique traits to it, but why are you so proud of our Arizona wine and this industry?
Oh, because the quality is exceptional.
The quality is
The
exceptional.
quality, yeah. And like I said, the students that are coming out of the Yavapai Southwest Wine Center is incredible. And I've known some of them who have, in recent years in the past, volunteered for events that I've worked on. And when I can see that individual who was a volunteer, because they were going through, they just wanted to get experience in the wine industry, and then they walk out. Tom Messier from Omphalos Winery got the Governor's Cup, or the Best in Show in the Arizona Wine Growers Competition. That just makes me happy.
Sure.
Yeah, I just love seeing people succeed when they put so much into it.
And man, they have to put a lot into it.
They do. Yeah. And the quality is there. It's just
it's
on the rise.
It's significant, the wine grapes that we're growing here in the state of Arizona, that's very critical, but this is one of those products where we can add value to it. So it's a value-added product. And that's not always easy to do in agriculture. You know, my family were cotton, wheat, alfalfa farmers. Well, if we were selling our cotton, it was on the main commodity, and it typically went out of country. It's a very international commodity. And we didn't really control it. But here we've got these amazing wine grape growers. I think of the Jim Grahams of the world and so many others. And then we've got some of the most amazing winemakers here in the state of Arizona. It's kind of like this hidden gem in our state, and it needs to be celebrated. And this today, Valeree, has really helped me.
It's been very valuable.
And I'd also like to add, too, I mean, there are several restaurants that have opened up as a result of the popularity of the wine. Caduceus, Merkin.
Oh, that's true, yeah.
Maynard has 2 restaurants up in Verde Valley, one in Jerome, one down in Cottonwood.
Yeah, Cottonwood. I've been there, the one in Cottonwood. It's huge. You need to go there.
Todd and Kelly have opened up a patio where they're making food now. You've got Pavle and Los Milich, and they have...
Oh, that's right.
They haven't been down there yet, but they have a patio where they serve food. I'm not
We
sure.
need to go down there.
Yeah, we do need to go down
He's
there.
very
and
passionate.
Then the places that used to be, I don't know. Well, Merkin used to have one in Old Town, but I think they amalgamated up there in the Verde Valley. Just off the top of my head, those. So there's, again, your added value, taking Arizona agriculture and Arizona wine.
We're getting pretty sophisticated.
We are. That's wonderful to see.
Well, thanks again, Valeree and Tammy. I think this one was so fun. We're going to definitely have to have her back, but it's going to have to be a wine tasting.
We're going to have to do a follow-up wine tasting.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you so much.
Yeah,
This
it was a
great
pleasure. Thank you for
information.
having me, too.
Enjoyed
It was
having
fun.
you.
Thank you.
And for those of you that watch this segment, we're going to have plenty of information on our websites, on Arizona Milk Producers website, also on Arizona Farm Bureau's website, also Fill Your Plate. And this segment will be available for viewing, especially for some of those great things that you taught us, Valeree. We might have to watch this more than once. So go to YouTube to Fill Your Plate now.